trying to start a summer sermon series, something that doesn't have to build on one another, something that we can always, something that as people are away for different Sundays on vacations, that we can continue and kind of have fun with. And so our sermon series is called Weird Indiana. Each Sunday we'll be using as our illustration something fun, something interesting, some interesting tourist trap in Indiana that we can examine and we can take delight in as we study the scriptures each week. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm from a small town called Frankton, Indiana. And Frankton it's in Madison County. It's largely a farm community. And there are things about that place that are very, very special. And frankly, a few things that aren't. But today I wanted to concentrate on the things that really make it distinctive. My little home church, Frankton First United Methodist Church, is a beautiful little place, and they bought a building right across the street that used to be a factory, and they call it the factory. And now it's where the prom takes place, and plays, and community events, and it's become kind of a little staple of the entire community. They do their contemporary service in the factory and their traditional service in the church building. And it was a really, it was, in terms of a place to grow up, it wasn't too bad. There are people who talk about they had to come in when the lights went on, the street lights. Well, in my neighborhood, there was only one of them, so we didn't. We stayed out. We stayed out till it was just dark, like completely dark. And it was wonderful. We had a creek near my house where we'd catch turtles and things like that. And some interesting things about the community that you wouldn't expect. A lot of people were on legacy farms that they'd been on for over, for hundreds of years. And some of them would joke, yeah, as we were heading out west, this is where the wagon wheel broke, so we stayed. Mr. Canfield, who just one of the more, how should I put it? Well, one of the wealthier farmers in the area, he had an old barn on his property, and you'd go into the barn and you'd climb up into the hayloft, and then you'd cross a little place, and then you'd climb down again into one of those ladders that they had in pools, and there was in that barn was a basketball hoop, and people come into that barn to play basketball. You'd have to go up and over and through and down, and it was sort of magical in that way. And he would keep it open for any kid who wanted to come. Any kid who wanted to come play basketball. It couldn't get more Hoosier than that. And my home church, as I told you probably before, you're going to hear it again, might as well get comfortable. My home church was built on a little program that they created called Heaven's Half Acre or Heaven's Acres. And the farmers would contribute the crop from 1 acre of their farmland to help build the church building. And that's how they built my church. And what was interesting about this community is being a farm community, one of the things that would happen is if a farmer was injured or sick when it was planting or harvesting season, all the farmers in the area would arrive at their farm early in the morning and farm all of their fields in one day, so that farmer who was sick could concentrate on getting better and know that his crop was taken in and his family was cared for and his livelihood was secure, his family legacy was secure. I saw this in action in my home church when, and yes, his name is Don Knotts, y'all. A carpenter in our church. You see, some of you aged yourself just now. A carpenter by the name of Don Knotts, he made his living, by his hands when he broke his arm, which meant that he couldn't build his beautiful cabinets and he couldn't do his job anymore. And so his sons would go out literally to farm for the family, to hunt deer so that they would have enough food to eat, and money was scarce. And so the entire church family, indeed the entire community, took turns making sure the Knotts family had something to eat. And when a tornado came through the town and made another family homeless, guess what? They moved in with the Knotts family until they had a home secured. This is the kind of community that I grew up in. And, despite its failures, which are legion, it's good to know that there's goodness there too. But little did I know that a mere 15 minutes from my parents' house was a wonder so marvelous, so powerful, so overwhelmingly incredible, why one might even call it Weird Indiana. Little did I know that a mere 15 minutes away from my home was the world's largest ball of paint. Da, 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 da. A painter, a house painter nearby, had decided on a little project for he and his kids. One day, a baseball rolled into some paint, and so they started to every day he'd get home and they'd put another layer on it, and pretty soon they had a really large piece of paint. In fact, as you see here, this is layer number 26,342. This thing weighs over 5 tons. I know, right? And it was just 15 minutes from my house. How did I not know that something so marvelous and miraculous and incredible was there? Please hit the next button. People have come from all over the world to see this thing. From Canada and England and Belgium and Guatemala and Poland and some Turkey and Greece and Austria. People have come all this way to see this ball of paint. Hit it again. Hit it again. These are the various colors, and they keep track of how many colors there are. Just 2 silver ones, 519 peach, and 2,774 coats of white. And what was interesting is it is actually in the Guinness Book of World Records, and they drilled into the middle of it to check how many layers there were, and they ended up having so many layers, they used it as the border at the top of the page. Hit it again. Now this yellow coat right here is very, very important, because one of the things that you can do is that you can go to the museum and put a coat of paint on all by yourself, and therefore be the record holder for at least until someone else comes along. And guess what, folks? This yellow is my layer. My sister, my nephew, and I all went to work on this beautiful ball of paint, and it looked like a big lemon when we were done. He even has like a mirror on the floor so you can be sure to get the bottom, cover the whole thing. And hit the next thing. And then after you're done, you can sign your name on the wall. That's my sister's signature right there, Kathy Long. And finally, just hit it one more time. One more. Or not. I think I had a picture of the outside of the museum, but it really is very nondescript. Well, there it is. And guess what, folks? The ball has gotten so big that they've got to retrofit this thing with a dome so they can lift it up further so people can continue to add layers and layers of paint. Now, how incredible is that? I mean, I could be proud of the way in which the good people take care of one another in the town of Franklin, but really, it's all about the world's largest ball of paint. And the funny thing is, as proud as we are of where we come from, there is a reality that sometimes that can make us blind to the things that God wants to do. And so here we arrive at the story of Naaman, a general for the king of Aram, a great man and highly regarded among his people. And he's also a tremendous soldier. He's a soldier. He's in charge of all the armies, and he is a man who knows how to get things done. And like most soldiers, he finds himself incredibly, incredibly proud of the nation he serves and the people that he comes from. And we also have an indication here in the text that says that he was probably a very good and sort of righteous man as well. It says here that a young girl, an Israeli girl, was captured by his armies. And it says she served Naaman's wife. Now, in the first century, and frankly in many centuries since, a young woman, a young girl who is captured by an army, usually doesn't have a very good road ahead of her, right? Captured by a foreign army, a young woman, we can all read between the lines if we have to, right? But for some reason, she has found herself the servant of Naaman's wife. And the other indication that we have here is that she's able to speak aloud to her mistress, which means that she's not to be silent. She can actually speak to them, which shows that she's pretty high up in the household. You know, even in Victorian England, there were certain servants that were so low on the totem pole they couldn't speak to their boss, right? This young woman has somehow risen in the household to where she is able to, she's not only close to Naaman's wife, but she's able to speak. And when she does speak, what does she say? Gosh, I know Naaman has leprosy. I wish he would go and talk to the prophet of the Lord and be healed. even she wants good things for Naaman. So all of these are indications of Naaman's righteousness and his goodness, and the fact that he's probably a very serious, probably very dedicated soldier, and he doesn't like a lot of messing about. And so Aram's king says, go and I'll send a letter to Israel's king. And so Naaman leaves, and he's got lots and lots of money and tributes and gifts for the king, along with a letter saying, please cure him of his disease. And he arrives at the king of Israel's house, and the king of Israel is like, what am I going to do? I don't have a degree in cosmetology. I don't know how to help this man. And so he realizes that maybe what's happening here is that the king of Aram is trying to put him in an unwinnable situation. Put him in a situation that he can't fix. And in doing so, have a good reason to declare war. I told you to heal him, you didn't, and so therefore I'm going to come over, take over your lands, and take over your nation, and then it's all done for you. And this is his secret fear. So what does he do? What does the king of Israel do? He demonstrates his brokenness, his sadness, by tearing his clothing from the top to the bottom. In this ancient culture, ripping your clothing was a sign of tremendous mourning. It was usually reserved for moments when your firstborn son died, when you've lost everything, when your nation has been destroyed. And this king, he's already there. He's like, well, we're toast. King of Aram is going to come along and he's going to destroy us all. And pretty soon Elisha sends him a letter saying, why did you rip your clothes? Do you have any faith at all? Like, seriously, dude, send him to my house. And so Naaman comes. And what does he tell him? Go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Doesn't even come out of his house. Now Naaman is not used to this kind of treatment, number one. He's a very important general. He's a very important man. The very idea that Elisha wouldn't even leave his dwelling to come and talk to him. Wow, how dare he? It's kind of like if the Queen of England comes along and knocks on your front door and you're like, I'm busy, right? It doesn't happen, right? And then he tells him something that's even more embarrassing. He says, go wash yourself in the Jordan 7 times. Now we all know the biblical concept of 7 times is a sign of completion. It takes God 7 days to create the world. 7 is used in the Bible to represent a complete washing, right? But what does he have to say? He's so patriotic. He's so dedicated to his nation. His first response is to say, aren't all the rivers in Damascus better than all the muddy rivers you Israelis have? And here you are, and you want me to go wash in your muddy river, right, and then I'll be healed? Trust me, my country, my nation, my rivers are better than your rivers. See how patriotic he is? See how connected he is? See what he's saying? Oh, my nation is better than your nation. You're just some little muddy backwater place. My nation is better. And so he almost misses out on the healing and the transformation that God has to offer. But someone with a cooler, less haughty head than his comes to him and says, Naaman, if he told you to do something hard, to climb Mount Everest and pluck the hair off the beard of a Sherpa, you would have done it. But all he told you to do is go and wash in the river 7 times. Surely you can at least try it. And so Naaman goes to the Jordan River, and he washes 7 times. And when he emerges from the water on the 7th time, his skin is clear. His leprosy has been healed. Naaman returns to Elisha. This is the story that happens next. And he says, I will be a follower of God my entire life. But will you talk to God on my behalf for one thing? When I return home, the king of Aram is going to take me into the temple of his God. And I'm going to have to kneel next to him and help the king to stand and sit. When I kneel in that pagan palace to that pagan god, will you ask God not to hold it against me because I'm just being responsible to my king? And Elisha says, you are fine. That's perfectly allowable. And so for the rest of his life, Naaman would take the king into his temple and sit there next to him as he worshipped. But in his heart, he was a worshiper of the God of Israel. All of this points towards several warnings that we need as a people. Several things that we need to realize and several things that we need to hold in our hearts. Even on great holidays like the 4th of July, we need to realize and to continually check ourselves that our dedication to our country, that our patriotism, that our nationalism does not go so far that we miss out on the blessings that are around us in other places. that we overlook the wonders that are right next to us and the things that are right in front of us that perhaps are different than we are but are still valuable. I still remember years ago, one of the youth came home from a study abroad trip, and he'd actually been in Siberia. He was studying. He had a course in Russian history. He went to Russia. He studied in Siberia. He talked about how warm the people's homes were and how lovely and comforting they were and how pleasant they were and how they just wanted to show him and give him everything that he had, to show to him the wonders of where they came from. And so as he's talking about this in church, there was a question and answer period afterwards, and a gentleman came up and he said, "And now that you're back in America, you see how much better we are, right?" And I remember listening to this, and of course the young man said, "Oh yes, I really missed having MTV, and I really missed having television, 20 television channels, and all these things." And I remember sitting there thinking, was it really about that? I mean, was it really